Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to those watching on the interwebs. And thank you, Dr. Gorka, for being here. You've been in Trump world for a very long time. You've worked in counterterrorism for a long time. You are now, as my colleague said, the Deputy Assistant to the President and the Senior Director for Counterterrorism. Can you start by just walking us through what your mandate is in this critical moment?
Very simply, to protect the innocent and to deal earthly justice to evildoers, the individuals who threaten our U.S. citizens, whether here or abroad, the global jihadi movement, be it Sunni or Shia. Our job in the Directorate for Counterterrorism is to suppress that threat until these organizations, the Tier 1 threat groups, are incapable of executing mass casualty attacks against Americans. It's a very simple mission.
And are there new tactics, new approaches that you are using that are different from what previous administrations have done? I know you're limited in exactly what you can tell us, but can you walk us through the difference in your approach to this issue?
Two fundamental differences. Number one, we actually kill terrorists. For the last 4 years, the person you had on the stage previously, Mr. Sullivan, the propagator of the Russia hoax, demanded that any attack against high-value jihadis must be sent to the White House and be signed off by him and Joe Biden when he was awake. That was inexcusable. As a result, dozens and dozens of Americans were killed, hundreds of our allies and partners were murdered by groups like ISIS, and as a result, when we came in the building, we reverted to the rules of engagement under the first Trump administration, which meant that if theater commanders saw a high-value target and there was no danger of collateral damage, their job was to kill them. As a result, in the first 100 days, we've killed more than 74 high-value jihadi targets. So basically, we're back in the business of doing counterterrorism.
Any civilians caught up in that?
Secondly, you asked, I told you two things that have changed. Mm-hmm. We take ideology seriously. Under the Obama administration, the Biden administration, there was this asinine, fallacious concept that John Brennan, a traitor to this nation, tried to sell as the advisor for counterterrorism to Obama, that terrorists are created by, quote, upstream factors, such as lack of education and poverty. That is complete and utter garbage. If you look at the 9/11 hijackers, you look at bin Laden himself, a scion, a millionaire from a Saudi family. We realized it's not poverty, it's not lack of education, it's belief in the ideology of global jihad, in the Wahhabi Salafist version of Islam. What we are doing right now and preparing the new US counterterrorism strategy is refocusing on the real cause of jihadism, which is the ideology of jihad.
How do you battle an ideology?
You delegitimize those who propagate it. One of the most important things we brought back from Abbottabad, in addition to bin Laden's dead body, were the terabytes of pornography on his hard drives. You pitch yourself as a great holy warrior, as an aesthete, an individual who is the vanguard of Islam, and you have lots of Pornhub accounts on your hard drive, kind of undermines your legitimacy. So we work with our Muslim allies, like the Jordanians and others, to take the fight ideologically to delegitimate these organizations at the same time as killing their leaders.
I asked about civilians. How do you factor into account the possibility of civilian casualties? Are those simply part of killing the bad guys, or is that something that you guys are actively trying to avoid? How do you make those calculations?
Of course we're actively trying to avoid it, but we follow the laws of war. So we do not target civilians, but we go after high-value threats. That's the priority, and we maintain everything under the requirements of international conflict.
I do want to talk about the big story of the week, which is the president's trip to the Middle East. It's unique in that the focus has been business. I mean, you look at some of the rooms and the net worth of individuals that are there, the biggest CEOs and business leaders from all around the world, including the United States. His focus has been on making deals. But do you see a connection between the deal making and national security, given how hot that region and really so much of the world is right now?
It applies to every region of the world. This is why the idiots who didn't understand what happened in the Oval with Zelensky are such cretins.
Who are those idiots and what didn't they understand?
Anybody who didn't understand the significance of the rare earth minerals deal. I can't tell you how many interviews I've done, especially with the European media, where they're screeching about, oh, you need NATO guarantees and you've got to sign a piece of paper with Kiev. The same kind of piece of paper, I guess, as the Budapest Memorandum from 1995. No, the whole point is that economy is inextricably linked to security. What is the power? I mean, if you're interested in a piece of paper, Neville Chamberlain came back from Munich and waved one in 1938 and said, we have peace in our time. After that, we saw 60 million people killed in World War II. It's not about pieces of paper. It's about intertwining economies. The fact that Americans will now be working in Ukraine on extracting rare earth minerals will mean that certain individuals in the Kremlin will probably think twice about invading again, unless, of course, there's a Democrat in the Oval Office, which seems to be the case whenever Russia invades Ukraine.
So how do you see
economy and national security are inextricably intertwined. And the bumper sticker for what the president is doing right now is very clear. 8 years ago, he went into the Hijaz. He spoke to 42 Arab and Muslim heads of state, and he said, you have to deal with jihad in your mosques, on your streets. He sent us such a powerful message that Muslims came up to me afterwards from the region and said, thank you for what the president said 8 years ago. After that, we had the Abraham Accords. We decimated, we destroyed the ISIS caliphate in Syria and Iraq. Now, 8 years later, we're moving to prosperity. So 8 years ago, it was security, the destruction of ISIS, the Abraham Accords. Now, it's prosperity with these incredible deals. The two are inextricably intertwined.
You recently slammed the new leader of Syria. You said you'd never seen a jihadi become a Democrat and a normal politician. You're now supposed to believe Syria's new leader won't kill Christians and Jews after being a member of al-Qaeda. President Trump met with the new leader of Syria. What was going through your mind as you kind of saw that embrace from the president, and would you have advised against it?
So what I said was regarding trend lines in my 26 years of doing this. And the fact remains, jihadis very rarely moderate, especially after they win. What I saw the president do was absolute genius. He has now said to this man, Giuliani, that you have a chance to stabilize Syria. But it's not unconditional. It's very clear that the minorities, especially the Druze, the Christians, the Kurds, must be parts of the government in Damascus. We are incredibly happy that the murderous regime of Assad is gone, that Iran cannot use the territory of that state to resupply its proxies like it did in absolute freedom for years on end.
So now, you believe it was a smart idea for the president to have that meeting?
Well, look, we have to stabilize that country. It has to be stabilized. Now we will see whether or not the current acting head of state can deliver. And we have some serious issues. We have thousands of ISIS terrorists and foreign fighters in detention facilities all over Syria. What happens to them? Will they be repatriated? We have Israel in the south. We have the Kurds in the north. We have other groups, Haras al-Din, terrorist jihadi groups that are functioning in that country. So this is the opportunity. This is the window to stabilize Syria. We shall see what Giuliani delivers.
Has he and should the president make some of those demands?
Oh, we have. Oh, trust me. Behind closed doors, we have made those stipulations very clearly.
To Sharon?
To the regime, absolutely.
Let's go back to Ukraine for a moment, because we touched on it, but I want to dig a little bit deeper given what is happening in Turkey today. President Trump, you know this well, has said many times on the campaign trail that he would end the war between Russia and Ukraine on day one. Obviously, this is an incredibly complicated conflict. The war is still very much ongoing. People are dying. There's peace talks today in Istanbul. Should the president be there? You said yourself that there's only one man who can broker this deal, and it's President Trump.
At the end of the day, the final settlement will see my boss, President Trump, in the room sealing the deal.
Should he have been in the room today?
No, because we need to have all the parties decide. One of the parties is missing, right?
Well,
so there's no point.
President Putin would have gone if President Trump went.
We need to make sure that there's no intransigence from all sides involved. But you can rest assured that when the final ink is put on that piece of paper, President Trump will be the person the man behind the art of the deal who seals that deal and stops the meat grinder that is the war in Ukraine.
Why has the president not met with President Putin, given he said today nothing's going to happen until Putin and I get together?
Well, we can't force Putin to meet. We're not going to lasso him and pull him.
President Trump knows how to put pressure on. He can lasso
when they're
in his
ready.
own way.
Timing. Deals are all about timing. When the time is right, that's when the president is in the room with Putin. But my expectation is imminently.
What does imminently mean?
That's all you're getting. You know I detest the Politico. I'm only here as a favor to a friend in the White House. You know who you are. I detest the Politico. You're not going to get anything more from me than imminently.
I'm just doing my job and trying to get more information for the American people, sir. It's as part of the conversation, part of the deal making, the president has said that the idea of Crimea being recognized as sovereign Russian territory is on the table. Do you think that some of those regions in the Donbass that have been under Russian control, is that and should that be on the table as part of these negotiations?
So I know you're from the Donbass, and this is personal to you, but I will not comment. It would be incredibly reckless of me, and I told you outside that I will countenance maybe one question on Ukraine because I'm the Senior Director for Counterterrorism. So we're kind of exhausted that topic at this point, but I'll tell you this. We live in the real world. The Trump administration lives in the real world. We recognize the reality on the ground, number one, that's the beginning, because we're not utopianists and we're not human engineers. We're not some kind of pie-in-the-sky believers in utopia. We recognize the reality on the ground, and we have one priority above all else, whether it's the Middle East or whether it's Ukraine. It's to stop the bloodshed. Everything else comes after the bloodshed has been halted.
Well, that is a revealing answer. Thank you for humoring me with another question there. The administration has designated a number of Latin American cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. That's something that you're deeply involved with. Can you explain to us the significance of that designation? We've already seen an escalation with the deportations to El Salvador, but how else might the administration take on these cartels under this designation?
Well, first, let's talk about the justification for the 6 cartels and the 2 gangs being designated as FTOs, foreign terrorist organizations. It's clear, it's really essential that all Americans, our partners, and Mexico understand as well why we did this. For my Newsmax show, before I came back into the White House, I devoted one episode to this problem, and I started with doing the math. And I just calculated how many Americans have died in uniform since the cessation of hostilities in 1945. So every KIA, Marine, Airman, soldier, Coast Guard, you name it. From Korea to Vietnam to Panama to Grenada, Gulf War, Gulf II, Afghanistan. In all of those conflicts combined, 103,000 Americans were killed. At the same time, I went to Biden's CDC website and I looked for the data on deaths by fentanyl and illicit drug use smuggled across the border. It was hard to find. You got to dig deep at the Biden CDC website, but I found it. In the second year of Biden and Harris's open border policies, 110,000 Americans were murdered by illicit drugs smuggled into this country, and in many cases prepared with precursors from China. More Americans were killed in 1 year, thanks to Biden and Harris and the cartels who facilitated them, than in 75 years of armed conflict. We are at war with the cartels, and that's why President Trump, Stephen Miller, Governor Noem, Tom Homan are doing what they do, because we will not permit this to continue.
So what doors does the foreign terrorist organization open for you all to tackle this problem in a new way?
So it opens a whole slew of judicial and financial and economic options on top of the obvious ones, which have to do with sanctions. Sanctioning not just individual organizations, but businesses that are doing business with the cartels and even individuals. So I'm really flabbergasted by the mainstream legacy lying media's conceptualization that FTO designation doesn't bring anything to the table. It brings a panoply of options we didn't have previously, simply dealing with them as criminal organizations.
Is there a military component potentially to tackling the cartels?
There may be, but that is up to the Homeland Security Advisor, to Secretary Hegseth, and our friends in Mexico. Mexico needs this problem to be fixed as much as we need to save American lives.
You're obviously in coordination with all of those folks. So is potentially sending troops, is that on the table?
Not something I'm going to discuss at this point. We are doing this in consultation with the Mexican government, who are vested in making sure that cartels are not running parts of Mexico as they currently are. There are estimates of upwards of 500,000 Mexican nationals working for the cartels, in many cases under duress. We'd like to see those Mexicans free from the scourge that is the cartels, as would the President of Mexico and everyone else.
Yeah, how closely are you all working with the President of Mexico now?
And especially his security director, absolutely.
In the interest of speeding up deportations, which was a massive campaign promise from President Trump, he's done the border piece of it. Now it's the folks in the country. Do you believe it's okay to skirt due process?
Never happened. Due process has never been skirted. This is another fake news canard. The fact that so let me be clear here, okay? Let me be clear. When an organization is designated by the Secretary of State as a foreign terrorist organization, every single stinking member is a terrorist by US law. There is no need for them to be adjudicated as a terrorist. Also, are you really hissing? What kind of a child are you? We're trying to save lives and you're hissing. Go back to high school and play spitball with your friends. What absolute children.
I've never played spitball before.
You've never used spitballs? Well, maybe not in Ukraine.
No spitballs in Ukraine.
So the fact is, when you have people, I looked at Politico's coverage. Politico used the Maryland father fake news. Maryland father, twice adjudicated by an immigration judge to be here illegally and to be deported. An individual who's arrested on body cam footage, anyone watching right now can watch him being stopped by local police with 7 illegals in his vehicle and no driving license. An individual involved in human trafficking who beat his fiancée. And this is a Maryland father for Politico. You don't need and you don't get the due process if you're a member of a terrorist organization.
Well,
Next, you'll be saying,
judges, including those appointed by President Trump, disagree.
Well, so what? Could they be wrong? Could a judge possibly be wrong? Maybe.
Well, that's why we have the process, and this is likely.
No. You're not listening. If you are a terrorist of an FTO, it's not a traffic ticket. You don't go to county court. You're a member of a federally designated terrorist organization. It's really that simple. If you're a wife beater and a human trafficker, goodbye.
Abrego Garcia case aside, in the interest of getting folks that you believe are bad actors.
Belief. So again, why are you saying belief?
Because
let's go back to this. Is 110,000 deaths a year a question of belief?
Absolutely not.
Nobody recovers from fentanyl. You know that. When you overdose on fentanyl,
and that is devastated. And I've met many families who have been devastated by it. However, we also have a process in this country for figuring out who the bad actors are.
And we figured it out. It's the 6 cartels and the 2 gangs that have caused 110,000 deaths a year.
Where the tricky point is the evidence, which due process usually helps provide,
Why are you
of whether
talking as
or
if
not.
These are people who are
because
U.S.
we
citizens?
don't know. Because we due process.
So you're defending members of FTOs.
No, I'm not defending anybody.
You are. No, what you're doing right now is you're sending designated terrorists should have the rights of somebody who's in a contractual dispute.
I think that transparency in why that designation is given to a certain person is important.
It's very easy what the transparency is. It's like a member of Al-Qaeda. If you're a member of Al-Qaeda, you're a terrorist.
How do you know if that they're members of these gangs? What I'm saying is...
You mean the tattoos MS-13 on their knuckles doesn't help it?
those...
Do you have tattoos of Al-Qaeda
The tattoo
On
did not
your
say
wrist?
MS-13. I don't want to get into that.
Oh, of course it does. It's just accidents that the four symbols represent the letters MS. See, this is why Politico is a joke. This is why you are gutter press and fake news. That those four symbols that just happen to comport with the letters MS and the numbers 13 don't, in this case, represent MS-13. You're sitting here live defending a member of MS-13. That's why I regret coming here, because this isn't journalism. This is protecting those who hate America. Shame on you. We are saving lives. Sir. Saving lives. How about Maryland fathers compared to Maryland mothers? Like Rachel Marin, mother of 5, raped and murdered and thrown in a ditch. How about Jocelyn Nungare, age 12, raped a mile from her home and thrown in a ditch? It's strange that Politico doesn't do articles about her, that mother, or that 12-year-old girl. Why is that? Why is the MS-13 guy with the knuckle tattoos more important in terms of due process than the lives of 12-year-old girls brutally raped? It's weird that the priorities shift to defending the member of an FTO, but not the children and the women. Dan Crenshaw told me a story once of a 16-year-old girl who was smuggled across this border. The parents paid $5,000 for her to live in America, the land of milk and honey. She ended up locked in a room in New York, raped by more than a dozen men every day for 18 months until she escaped. She went to Dan Crenshaw's office, and I'm no friend of Dan Crenshaw's, okay? He's still got TDS. And that girl said to him, please close the border so another girl doesn't have to be raped by 12 strange men every day for 18 months. It's strange that Politico doesn't cover those stories. Could you tell me why?
We have covered.
No, you haven't. You have not covered those stories. I'd like to see the Jocelyn Nungare, Rachel Marin stories in comparison to the Russia collusion garbage. I mean, let's be honest here.
Let's move on.
You have an agenda.
I want to talk about, well, I actually have a separate question about the deportations. Because the promises on the campaign trail regarded both the criminal element of undocumented immigrants here, but also, the president believes that anyone who came here illegally should not be here. So how do you move on and handle the folks who are here, who are, young families? I met a lot of young mothers with children crossing the border. What do you do about those folks? And are they going to be treated in sort of the same way as these others that we're talking about?
No, we're not going to treat people who came here for purely economic reasons as children, perhaps, as the same as we treat members of designated terrorist organizations. I mean, you're an immigrant, right?
I am.
So am I. I waited in line.
Yeah.
I took a test. I took an oath to the US Constitution. Shouldn't anyone who comes to America do what you did and I did?
Yeah, I'm not arguing that. I'm just asking how you will handle the families that are here in this country. And there are a lot of them, right?
Especially because of the last 4 years where we had no border, absolutely.
So what do you do there?
That will be a decision that is made by the Secretary of Homeland Security, Stephen Miller and Tom Homan, because right now we have tens of thousands of criminals here.
Well, and
that's the priority.
How do you distinguish between the two? Is it criminal records? Is it tattoos alone? Like, how are you?
Everything.
How are you figuring out who is the criminal element versus who are the people here?
The way we've done it since the inception of law enforcement. That's how we're going to do it. Since the intelligence community was founded by the National Security Act of 1947.
Well, I think we are living in an unprecedented moment in terms of the amount of people who are here, right? You've been saying that there are record numbers. So
I have been saying?
Yeah.
You disagree with that?
You've been emphasizing that there are record numbers. So I am asking, you can't just do it the way it's always been done. You guys don't like the way that it's always
No, the way it should be done.
Well, so
not the way it was done in the last 4 years. We actually treat these people as illegals, not migrants. You break the law when you try today. Try going to Mexico illegally.
Do people who came here illegally deserve due process?
As I told you, the priority right now is the worst of the worst. The members of the 6+2, the people who have proven criminal records, the people like Jocelyn Nungare's rapist and murderer, who were paroled by the Biden administration, who were paroled by the government in New York. Somebody you may have heard of, Alvin Bragg, who allowed that man to walk out of a New York police station to rape and murder a 12-year-old US citizen. We're going to jettison that garbage whereby the perpetrator is protected by the establishment, and we're going to use the full force of the law to identify, neutralize, and remove them, the way it should have been done for 4 years. That's how it's going to be done.
Let's talk briefly about Iran. The U.S. and Iran ended a fourth round of negotiations on Sunday over their nuclear weapons program. Are you encouraged by the progress of this nuclear deal, and how can the president's visit to the Middle East this week push that forward?
This is perhaps the most important thing with regards to the visit to the Middle East. I counsel everyone who deals with the region to listen to the president's press conferences, because whatever the press conference is about, whether it's about tariffs, the border, or anything else, 9 out of 10 times, he will mention Iran. And that is the primary threat. He has been very clear. Iran must dismantle its nuclear weapons capabilities and must assist in its support of all its proxies, all of them, not just Hamas and Hezbollah, all of them, including the Houthis. So with regards to what happens, that's up to the mullahs, to the murderous regime in Tehran that has been suppressing its people, not just the Persians, but all the minorities in that country since 1979. So the shoe is on the foot in Iran, and it's for them to decide whether they will face the full fury of the most consequential president of the modern age, or whether they will say, okay, we give it up.
Well, to that point, the president said in Riyadh that, quote, if Iran's leadership rejects the olive branch and continues to attack their neighbors, then we will have no choice but to inflict massive, maximum pressure.
Correct.
What does that mean, and could it come to that?
That, I think, is obvious. Maximum, disastrous consequences for the Islamo-fascist regime in Tehran. That's all we're going to say. Maximum, disastrous consequences for the bloodthirsty Islamo-fascist regime.
How likely is it to come to that, do you think?
If you look at the economic indices for the regime, if you look at the fact that in the first Trump administration, we put them on their knees within 18 months of the campaign of sanctions, we have redoubled with maximum pressure right now. The regime is in trouble. So there's only one logical decision they can make if they wish to save themselves and not to bring down the full force of President Trump and the mightiest war machine the world has ever seen.
You know, Iran, how likely are they to be logical?
That is yet to be decided.
And lastly, let me just ask you, you've been working on a counterterrorism strategy. When are we going to see that, and is there anything you can tell us about what's in it?
It's imminent. It will be coordinated with the interagency very, very soon. So within a couple of weeks, it should be ready inside the government, and then there will be an unclassified version of it, and then there'll be a classified version and annexes. The biggest difference is, as I said at the beginning, we take the threat seriously. It has increased thanks to Biden's surrender of Afghanistan, thanks to what ISIS is doing in Africa. We will take the threat seriously again. We will resource it properly. We will take ideology seriously. And perhaps not a surprise to anyone, our partners and our allies will be expected to do more. We are not here to police the world. The president was elected based upon no more stupid forever wars. As a result, we will make America safe. But if you have the shared threats that we do, you are expected to step up to the plate wherever you live.
All right, Dr. Gorka, thank you so much for being here. Thank you all for watching at home and watching here. Thank you for the lively discussion, sir. Next, we will have our editorial director for live events, Stephen Overly, come and close this all out. Thank you, guys.